Welcome into the final tournament preview that we're going to do anyway. Mountain West in this one. This is a conference that we've talked about a decent amount on this podcast, particularly at the top with New Mexico, San Diego State, Utah State's gotten some screen time. We've talked poorly about Nevada and the season they've had. Boise State's gotten a little bit of time. So, this is a league that is traditionally pretty fun. It's a little bit down this year, I would say, in comparison to previous years, but still, a fun league and a fun conference tournament. I think the potential for a bunch of weird stuff to happen, particularly this year, especially with the way that some teams performed in the regular season compared to what their expectations were.
Yeah, and there's a lot of NCAA tournament implications in this year's Mountain West tournament. I think a lot of these teams are on the bubble. Outside of New Mexico, I think we've got 4 of these Mountain West teams on the bubble where realistically we could see teams like San Diego State, Boise State, Utah State get worked out of the tournament entirely. San Diego State probably needs to win that game to feel pretty comfortable and then potentially win another to really solidify their spot. But they just haven't really been all that inspiring in league play. And I don't think that win against Houston can just carry them into the tournament. They need to do some other work throughout the season. And I just don't think they've been all that great. And like even Utah State, like they've been reeling as of late as well. So potentially you could see only 2 teams getting in from the Mountain West, and New Mexico really being the only lock as of now. And if everything goes really poorly, it could be a 1-bid league, which is kind of crazy to say. But this is my favorite league to watch every single year. And it's not as high quality as it typically is, especially from last year, where I think it was 6 bids last year. We're definitely not going to get that in this tournament, but no. I would like to see all 4 get in just because I love watching this league every year. And I love to see how they can perform in the NCAA tournament. Although it typically goes pretty poorly outside of San Diego State in their national championship run and getting the 3 straight Sweet 16s. But yeah, so definitely excited to talk about this and watch it when it starts on Wednesday.
Yeah, what's Boise State's bubble status?
They're sitting like first 4 out at the moment. They're going to need to beat San Diego State, and I think they can actually be in. I think that game could really turn into a play-in game, depending on how many bid sealers there are.
Yeah, seems like that's been the case for the 4-5 game in a couple of these leagues where, or at least, it means a little bit more. So I'm looking forward to that game. We've got a few first-round games on Wednesday. Nevada really has been the letdown of this conference all year. Had high expectations coming in, finished as the 7 seed in this league, which is very surprising. And then you've got a few other games, San Jose State and Wyoming. Not a ton of appeal to me there. And then UNLV and Air Force, same thing. Like Air Force, just not a good team. Not a good team.
No, and UNLV is in a pretty tough spot as well. No D. Don Thomas for potentially the rest of the year, and Julian Rishwain went down and with a non-contact leg injury in the last game, so I don't really expect him to play either. I haven't heard much on the status, but if both of those guys are out, their offensive upside kind of falls off of a cliff. I don't really think they're in all that much danger against Air Force, but you really never know. That UNLV team is extremely volatile, and this game will be on their home floor, so maybe they have a leg up in that area. But maybe my bold take of the tournament, and it's a bold take, but I'm not even going to say Air Force is going to win the game. But I do think Air Force can keep that game super tight. It's probably going to be a 16, 17 point spread, but I do think that game could come down to the final possessions if UNLV is kind of taking them lightly and they just don't have the offensive upside to really break away from any sort of competition right now. But as for these first round matchups, obviously, I'd say the San Jose State Wyoming matchup will be the most competitive. There's a lot of shot making on both sides in that game with Obi Agbim for Wyoming, who's been a great D2 transfer the entire year. He's averaging 15 to 16 a game. He's been one of the best shot makers in the league.
He's a tough shot taker and a tough shot maker.
Yeah.
Seems like he seeks out, he embodies the go get us a tough one.
He does. He's super fun to watch too. I think he's one of my favorite players in this league. And obviously San Jose State has shot makers of their own. I believe they're relatively healthy now. They had a stretch throughout this year where they weren't really healthy at all. But Josh Aduje, this Utah State transfer, he's been pretty fantastic this year. And they have other shot makers as well. Latrell Davis and Will McClendon, Donovan Yap. They can all make shots at a high clip, and they have the upside to beat. Baby. Yeah, they have the upside to beat pretty much any team in the league. They beat New Mexico this year at home. They took San Diego State to the wire. They took Boise State to the wire as well. So I wouldn't really be surprised if they could keep a game tight against New Mexico if they were able to beat Wyoming. But obviously that'll be a tough task for them as well. So there's some intrigue in the first round matchups. I don't think it's obviously not the highest quality of play compared to the other conferences that we talked about with like the power conference, like the SEC is obviously a super exciting first round. I don't think anybody's going to be running to their TVs to watch these Mountain West first round games, but there could be some intrigue, potentially a lot of close games that come down to the wire. With Fresno, they're pretty much dead at this point, although they've played a little bit better as of late. They kind of got caught up with that gambling situation that kind of derailed their season. Obviously, their season was kind of already off to the wayside anyway, with Jalen Weaver getting dismissed from the team due to gambling activity. They're probably their best scorer overall. So I don't really expect that game against Nevada to be all that tight. So Nevada should have a cakewalk into the next round, but who knows? Nevada can just do Nevada things and keep a game tight.
As bad as Nevada's been, is there a world where they're a dark horse here?
Yeah, I mean there is. They're banged up as well. I mean they haven't had Trey Coleman or Daniel Foster for the last couple of games, so not completely sure what their status is. Maybe they're just resting those guys for the last couple of games just to kind of gear up for this tournament, just because they're not an at-large team by any stretch of the imagination. And Colorado State, they've been on a heater, but their athleticism isn't through the roof, so they don't have the upside to really overpower any teams. And I think Nevada could keep up with them. If Colorado State has a poor shooting game, I can absolutely see them winning and going to the semifinals. And I'll talk about Utah State here in a few minutes when the bracket comes up, but not all that high on them in this tournament.
Yeah. Just to go back to Donovan Yap here, it's too bad they didn't set this thing up a little bit better, where he could have beaten both of his former Mountain West teams that he's played for en route to a Mountain West tournament championship. That would have probably been some history, right? I mean, he played for Fresno and UNLV, so would have been pretty cool to see him take down both teams en route to a Spartan Mountain West championship.
Yeah, that would be one of the more interesting storylines in college basketball, maybe. But I don't think that would have happened even if they were on the right side of the bracket. So,
no.
Yeah, I mean San Jose State, a fun team to watch from a shot making perspective, but
yeah,
the defense is pretty rough.
Yeah, so gonna jump right into bracket predictions here. Cody, like always, I'll start it off with you first. I'll let you speak to this one. You got Colorado State going all the way.
Yeah, and I do think they have the most fortunate path. They avoid New Mexico, San Diego State, and Boise until the final. Kind of let them beat up on each other until the championship game. And yeah, they're going to match up with Nevada in the second round, who's not the easiest matchup, but they just haven't really been all that great all season long. So I do expect the better team to win in Colorado State in that game. And two teams that I was looking to fade coming into this tournament were UNLV and Utah State. Sadly, they're probably going to play each other in the second round, so not really, like, I guess from a point spread perspective, I'm not really going to have much of an edge there. So, but I will take the better team in Utah State to win that second round game. I just don't see the upside for UNLV without two of their best players on the floor. But teams have figured out the Utah State zone. The matchup zone that they like to run has kind of been carved up on the interior, and they've actually had to switch up and play a little bit more man to man as of late. And this is not a team that's set up very well to play man to man. There's just not many good perimeter defenders on this roster. There's not a ton of rim protection either outside of Gattaretzi. You know, when they have to play guys like Carson Templin at the 5, it gets really ugly. He's really not a guy that you can play all that much man to man with him playing the 5. So I think Colorado State getting to see that zone for a third time is going to be very ugly for Utah State. I can see them carving it up just like they did in the second matchup, which was I believe a week ago, and they shot like 14 for 27 from 3, got a ton of open looks, and were able to break Utah State out of that zone. So I expect them to kind of have their way with the Utah State defense and en route to getting to the finals against New Mexico, where I think they match up pretty well in that game. It's just I'm going to pick them as the champion just because I think those teams at the top are kind of going to beat up on each other. I like how the Rams can slow down New Mexico and kind of force them into a half court game, and then I trust the shot making of Colorado State with how good they've been in conference play. They've even gotten contributions off the bench from guys like Bowen Bourne and Keyshawn Williams to help out Nate Clifford, who kind of had to take on a lot of the scoring load earlier in the year. And like, I'm super high on Nate Clifford overall. I've talked about him quite a bit here, and I think he's one of the more underrated players in the country. He's my favorite player in this entire league. So, but for him to get as much help as he's gotten lately, I think only adds to the upside for this team. And yeah, they're my pick to win the Mountain West. And this is a potential bid stealer as well. I mean, I know they're sitting around like next 4 out range, maybe a little bit further out than that. So if everything breaks right, you could actually see 5 teams get in as opposed to potentially 2. So yeah, this will make some other power conference teams a little bit upset seeing Colorado State win the league, but I feel pretty strongly that they can get through this.
Yeah, and what Clifford had a huge game the other day, 36 or something?
Yeah, it is incredible at Boise State as well. So they've shown that they can beat anybody in this league wherever they go.
Yeah. So I'm gonna pull mine up now. Looks a little bit quite a bit different actually. I've actually got Boise State going to my championship, and for me, I think Boise State, even though they're the 5 seed in this league, aside from San Diego State's win against Houston, I think they have the best wins of any team in this league out of conference. They beat Clemson. Granted, it was at home. They beat St. Mary's. They do have some bad loss or a few bad losses in there with Boston College and Washington State hasn't aged very well. But I've watched this Boise State team, and they have one of the best players in this league in Dagenhart, and then Andrew Meadow has been pretty good, as goofy looking as he is. I think that they're very well coached. I think they have a path. And I know they've struggled with San Diego State this year, but if they can get by that one, I think they do have a path to, lock up a tournament berth for them, not have to wait until Sunday to hear their name called. Right now they're really sitting on that bubble. If they win the first one, I think they've got a pretty good chance. But they're going to be extra motivated trying to get into that tournament. And I think that they have the talent to be able to win this thing. I think there are a lot of ways this league could go. As I said, I think there are a bunch of teams that could win it. I mean, heck, even Nevada, for what they were projected, I think that they're able to win this, even though they're far from expected to. But Like you said about those first round games, going back to those, not a ton of appeal there. I went with Wyoming to get it done, even though San Jose's shot making could ultimately get them to a win. Then I went Nevada and actually had Nevada winning a second game against your champion Colorado State. Just kind of a hunch. I think that I don't expect it, but they were slated to be much better, and maybe they press the right buttons in the tournament and get going a little bit. It's all one game championships at this point, right? You win in advance, you get to the next day. So then that bottom part of the bracket, Utah State and UNLV, it doesn't really excite me that much. Utah State, I think, gets through that one pretty comfortably. And then Utah State, Nevada, this game, I wasn't going to go too crazy and put Nevada in my championship game. I don't think they're that good, even though I think they could get there. So I went a little bit more conservative, Utah State here, which leads me to the championship between Boise and Utah State. And I think, to your point about Utah State struggling a little bit, Boise State has that, top end talent. Degenhart, as good a player as anyone in this league. And I think that they're capable of winning that game and winning this whole league. So, I'm going to go with the Broncos to get it done. Although, like I said, I think, there's probably 6 teams that are 5 or 6 teams that could win this league.
Yeah, I agree. I think there definitely are 6 if you counting Nevada as well. If Nevada wins that game against Colorado State, I think they can absolutely beat Utah State. I just think they're Utah State's at a disadvantage with teams seeing that zone for a third time. And Nevada didn't have a ton of success against it the first couple times, but getting to see it a third time is huge. And the shooting ability that they have can absolutely break that zone and really break down that defense. So I think if you wanted to be extremely bold, I would have put them in the final if you liked them to beat Colorado State in that matchup. But yeah, my heart kind of wants. What's that?
I didn't want to be too bold.
Yeah,
didn't want to be too bold.
Yeah, with Nevada, I mean, realistically, they could just crumble and lose to Fresno as well. Although I don't really see that happening. But yeah, I think Boise State, they definitely have the talent. They have the balance across their roster to win the game. And obviously, Degenhart is a fantastic player. Alvaro Cardenas is a really good point guard and a point guard that they've needed really the entire season. He's going to have to play really good basketball in order to get them there. And San Diego State in the first round is a tough matchup, and they kind of showed that in their 2 matchups this year. I think the athleticism of San Diego State kind of overwhelms them a little bit, but then again, San Diego State's offense could just crumble, and Boise State could walk into the semifinal matchup. San Diego State might get Magoon Guath back. We're not completely sure yet. I haven't seen anything on that, but he's one of the best rim protectors in the entire country. So if he doesn't go, I think Boise State can absolutely win that game too.
Yeah, Boise State to me too is really a team that I want to see in March Madness. That probably goes against popular opinion. Not a lot of teams like seeing a bunch of Mountain West teams in, and Boise's obviously had their struggles in the first round. Really can't win a game in the first round of March Madness, but I do like this Boise team, and I like the weirdness of Andrew Meadow. I think he's very unassuming. I watched him catch a lob, and I was like, whoa, did not expect that out of Andrew Meadow. But
yeah,
who knows?
Yeah, and I guess just a question that I would pose is if we see we'll probably see 4 teams in from the Mountain West as of now. How many wins do you think we get from the Mountain West? I'd probably set an over under 1.5, maybe even a half, just with where they're going to be on the seed lines.
I think they get 1.
New Mexico probably winning a game as an 8 seed.
Yeah, I don't know who it will be. And that 8-9 line this year is going to be, I think, as difficult as it's ever been. There are going to be some top level programs on that seed line. So it'll be very interesting, I think, on the 8-9 line. not only for that game, but for whoever the 1 seed is that sees those teams, because it's going to be scary. I think, like, if you get a UConn or a Gonzaga, I don't know what, you don't really want to see those teams.
Right. Yeah. And I think,
or even Kansas. I mean, Kansas is pretty close there, right?
yeah, if they lose their first game, I think they would definitely be on the 8 line. Like if they lose to Utah, I think you could see them on the 8 line. And then if they have to play a team like Utah State, which I think they're a tough prep on a short turnaround with their zone, their weird matchup zone that the second the ball enters the paint, they switch to man-to-man. So it is definitely a tough prep. And if they win that first game, I think they could be dangerous for a team to get to the Sweet 16 potentially. I don't like their overall outlook, especially in like a first round matchup when a team has 3 to 4 days to get ready for that zone. I don't like them in that first round matchup, but if they win, I think they can potentially be dangerous.
Yeah. So that about wraps it up for the Mountain West. Should be another fun tournament, although it doesn't have necessarily the same appeal that it has had in years prior. But a lot of close games to expect, I think, in this league. So enjoy these games, even if you don't watch any of those dud first round games. Should be fun for the most part after that. So enjoy them. Enjoy all the conference tournaments, and stay tuned on all the bets we might have coming out, all the content we're going to have coming out leading into March Madness. But other than that, we'll talk to you in the next episode.